I've been playing Elden Ring for about 2.5 years now, and in between that period of time, I've experimented with a ton of different playstyles ranging from strength builds, to dex builds, to faith builds, to dual wield builds, to the kind of builds that you use when you want to ruin someone's night in PvP, and the game's hidden easy mode. And of course, your standard two-handed builds. And honestly, there's a lot of great ways to play Elden Ring, and it's definitely a lot more accessible than other games in the Souls series, allowing you to pretty much play however you wanted to. And one of the biggest features they added back was power stancing from Dark Souls 2, where it's basically if you equip two of the same weapon types, you get a new moveset that involves attacking with both weapons when you press the left bumper or L1. But honestly, it's a lot of fun to use with the right weapons. However, while power stancing does seem to be the more popular choice, and technically the better choice, I wanted to explain in this video why I tend to gravitate more towards simply two-handing weapons rather than power stancing. Now, before we begin, I just want to make it clear that this video is primarily just going to be an opinion-based video rather than any objective fact, so I'm definitely not in any place to be giving pro tips for this video, nor am I trying to spread misinformation. Well, right now at least. But without further ado, let's get on to this. So when I played the Dark Souls games, I got a feel for the genre and how to properly play, and when I did, I also tend to prefer using a two-handed weapon rather than a sword and a shield, or dual wielding. And in Bloodborne's case, I prefer the trick weapons that's turned into two-handed weapons rather than the ones where you could still use your pistol. Okay, well, I lied a little bit. I do use shields in Dark Souls games sometimes, but mainly in 1 and 2. But overall, my favorite method of using weapons is the two-handing them. But why is that the case, specifically in Elden Ring? Well, let me explain why. So, the big reason, and probably the most simple one, I just like the way how it feels. However, there are some weapon types where I actually prefer power stancing instead, namely straight swords, curved swords, thrusting swords, hand axes, to name a few on the top of my head. But generally, when I'm using heavier weapons, or weapons that, are made in mind for using two-handed, like great swords or great axes for example, the two-handed moveset just feels a lot better in my opinion. Especially for, like I said, the more powerful and big weapons, they just generally feel a lot more satisfying to use. Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure they're meant to be used that way. Like, personally, I find the moveset for power stance halberds to be a bit clunky, and I would rather just two-hand halberds rather than power stancing them. And I just find with a lot of the power stance attacks for heavier weapons, they just have a way too long of a lineup, so either you're gonna have to time them right, or hope to god you have a fuck ton of poise. So generally, if I'm going to be power stancing, I would rather just use it for lighter weapons, although that's not always true, since I prefer the two-handed movesets of twin blades and light greatswords a lot more than their power stance counterpart, despite the fact that they're both lighter weapons, like I mentioned. Now, the reason why I feel this way is these two weapon types, well, they definitely feel great to dual wield, and I find that they really shine through their two-handed movesets. In the case of the twin blades, it's how they hit multiple times during a single attack if you two-hand them. That's if I recall correctly. And since like I said, the weapon is designed to be a two-handed weapon, it just feels better that way. And with the light greatsword, I feel like you get a lot more use and flexibility out of it, especially since it feels pretty seamless to incorporate a heavy attack right after your light attack combo, or vice versa. And while some exceptions may apply, I just generally like two-handing weapons more often than not compared to power stancing. It also feels less gimmicky too, since I want to get the most I can out of a weapon and its moveset beyond just spamming jumping attacks. But also another reason why I prefer two-handed weapons rather than power stancing was because of the strength bonuses that they tend to give, among other things. So typically if I'm playing any build that primarily focuses on the strength stat, this is where two-handing weapons are going to shine the most in my opinion, since using a weapon with two hands will boost your strength 1.5 times. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong though. And this especially comes in handy with the two-handed talisman that you can get in the DLC. So pair that with the strength bonus you get, this is where two-handing weapon really comes in. Not to mention just how two-handing weapon generally seems to improve your poise damage done to enemies as well, especially if you're the type of person that loves to use charged heavy attacks. This is where it'll really shine. And there are a few other reasons why I enjoy it too, namely being able to block and counterattack. It generally consumes less stamina than power stancing, as well as just having a lower equip load as a result, which is great if you want to, wear heavier armor and not fat roll. But two-handed weapons, if you primarily use builds that incorporate strength, this is where it'll really come in handy. But I mean, power stancing is still really cool, and they do give a lot of benefits, especially with lighter weapons that involve proccing bleed and frost. But in terms of raw damage, I just generally prefer two-handing weapons, along with the other reasons I mentioned. But that about wraps it up for what I have to say. I know this was a little quick video, but I wanted to just make this and explain why I feel this way. But let me know down in the comments whether or not you guys prefer two-handing weapons or power stancing them. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and I will see you guys next time. It's always a pleasure, lads. Umbruhh, out.